And we said that the malacha of separating is actually also when you separate good from bad. It just happens to be that in many situations you're allowed to separate the good from the bad because that's considered part of the process of eating when you take the good from the bad. I don't want to go over everything we did yesterday, but just briefly, does anyone ask a specific question you don't understand? Just ask to clarify it. And in order to be allowed to separate, there has to be three conditions. You have to be taking the oichel, the food, mitah from the waste, which means the good from the bad, what you desire from what you don't desire. And there are exceptions to the rule, like, for example, an orange. You could peel an orange on Shabbos. So peeling an orange, if you're peeling an orange, you still have this condition because that's how people eat an orange. You peel it. Some of you don't understand, just ask, because I'm going over the kids of it briefly from yesterday. So some of you don't get, just speak on. And the second condition has to be close to the time, close to the time of eating, which means before the meal. So if you're cutting up a vegetable salad, you don't do it before you go to shul. You go after you come back from shul. That's called close to the time of eating before the meal. You're cutting up the salads because now you're separating. When you're cutting up tomatoes and peppers, you're separating the bad from the good. Third condition is to be beyond by hand, which also includes using a ladle when you scoop out soup and when you take out the chunk, because it's that vessel is not assisting in the separation. It's just making it easier so you don't get dirty, you don't burn yourself. So it's excluding using a vessel that's going to assist you in the separating. For example, a peeler. So you can't use a peeler on Shabbos. If you're using a peeler to peel a mango, let's say, you cannot use there are peelers for mangoes, right? The special peelers that help. That says, yeah, are there? Okay, I think we could. I'm not saying an apple because an apple you could peel because people eat the peel. So if using a peeler to peel an apple, it's not called separating because people eat the peel. So, but if using a peeler for other fruits that you don't eat the peel, they're using a utensil to help with the separation, and that cannot be done on Shabbos.
So you can use a peeler to peel like cucumbers and apples.
So cucumbers, because people eat the peels of the cucumbers, so it's edible. So it's not. So you're allowed to use a peeler. In other words, you still remember you have to have all three conditions. So you're still retaining the third condition, which means it has to be by hand. It's not considered using a. Oh, 1 second, let me back up. Sorry. A cucumber, the peels are edible. Okay. So therefore, when you're peeling a cucumber, it's not even called separating, because the definition of separating, in other words, to be allowed to separate, you need three conditions. But you need three conditions when you are separating. If you're not separating, you don't need three conditions. I'm not separating. Can I take a tissue out of this box? It's called separating. Do I need a condition? Okay, it has to be stuff only if I'm going to use it right away. No, it's not called separating. So if it's not separating, it's not separating. So a cucumber is like this. The peels are edible. So therefore, peeling a cucumber, there's no limitation. But there is a catch over here. To the best of my knowledge, when you're peeling the top and the ends, those parts is a little bitter. So even though people can eat the peel, but they don't eat the top and the bottom, right, to the cucumber? If I understand, assuming that's the case, then there will be an issue peeling the cucumber, at least peeling those parts. So to peel those parts, when you're more technical, those parts will be considered separating. And could you do it on Shabbos? Well, so now we go to the conditions. It has to be by hand. So using a peeler, using a peeler would be a problem even if you have the other conditions, because the peeler is actually assisting in the separating. It helps you separate the peel from the cucumber. So to peel a cucumber, that part would be an issue even if you're doing it close to the time of eating,
But that
right?
part,
But that part,
not
the rest you could peel anytime. That's what comes out. But the top, because it's not edible, so now you're separating it. Now the peel is actually assisting in the separation. So you don't have the third condition, which means it has to be by hand. You're using a vessel. So now there's no way you could do it, even if you're going to be eating now. But with a knife, okay, with a knife you could do it, but then you have to have the other conditions. Okay, this one we said we don't need because this is how you get. This means the good from the bad, but this in a cucumber, that's how you do it. You take the bad from the good. But you still have to have this condition, which is samach lachila, close to the time of eating, which means that it's before the meal when you come home from shul. Is this clear?
Yeah.
Is there anything not clear about what we're discussing? Yeah.
I just want to clarify, so any fruit or vegetable where the peel is edible, you can peel it with a peeler like anything.
Correct. If it's edible and people
Eat it.
generally eat it, you're allowed to. It's because it's food, because it's edible. And there's no, and even though using a specialized utensil, but you're not separating.
Right.
Right, so let's continue from where we left off. Cantaloupe. How do you peel a cantaloupe? How do you separate the cantaloupe? So could you peel a cantaloupe? Yeah, with a knife. Take it and peel the knife. And has to be always, this is like the main condition always comes in, close to the time of eating. But then when you cut it open, and then you have the whole section of seeds inside, whole cluster of seeds. Now, could you take off the seeds? No, just like you're allowed to peel an orange at Shabbos, if it's close to the time of eating, why should this be any different? You could take off the whole cluster of seeds. But there's a catch over it. The catch is that it's brought down that when you do it, try to do it all at once. If you don't do it all at once, you just yeah, there's still some seeds left, right? Usually you keep on going until you get everything off, right? You're not a machine, everything comes off. But if you take off a whole bunch and there's still a couple of pieces left, then you have an issue. According to many opinions, you can't take that. It's like it's similar to seeds in the watermelon because you could eat it the way it's now. So for a couple, just like you can eat watermelon, the seeds, and spit it out, people can eat it that way. So the same thing is also with the cantaloupe. Once you take off the main cluster and there's just a couple of seeds left over there, now you can't take it off. So what you want to do is practically is when you take off the cluster, try to be a little more precise and try to take off the whole thing at once. To do it carefully, so you take the whole thing and it comes off all together, and then you have no issue. Yeah.
Did you try and take the rest off by like keeping a little bit of the good part of the cantaloupe with them? Like you scrape it off with a bit of the cantaloupe?
Right. So could you take it off with cantaloupe? Yes, because then if you cut it with cantaloupe, and what are you doing with that cantaloupe? You can eat it or you're gonna throw it out?
It's part of the, that's the good part, right?
Then it's an issue because then throw it out. So now it becomes questionable. So if you're going to take up a significant part, you're not going to throw it out, and eventually you'll with your mouth, you take off the seeds and you eat it, whatever. But if you're throwing it out, then it becomes questionable. Okay. Could you use an apple corer? You know what apple corers? Apple corers? Okay. So let's say you peel an apple. And then you want to cut it into 4 parts. So instead of cutting it with a knife, you have what's called an apple corer. It's like it's round, and you stick it inside, and it cuts through the stem, and then you have the 4-part meat. It's round and it has edges, so it goes like this. That's really good in drawing. Basically, right, so it's something like this, right? Yeah, actually, it doesn't look too bad. Better than what I thought it would look like. So basically, this is like the top of it. So imagine this is the table, and this is the top, the apple, and this is going into the apples. You see, these are blades. So it's cutting through the core. It's good, yeah. And then it cuts it into 4 pieces, and it cuts through this. Now I have 4 pieces. So it's taking out the inside, which you don't eat. Are you allowed to use that on Shabbos?
Yes,
Why?
because you're also cutting the other part.
You got that? Because you're also cutting, you're cutting good and waste together. You're getting the good part of the apple with it also. You're not just getting you get after. You can take this piece, and if you want, if you're desperate, you could like eat around it. There is some apple, so you're taking good and bad together. So you're not separating bad from good, you're separating good from good. Get it? So that even though it's a specialized utensil, and it sounds like, wow, it's a specialized utensil that's designated for quote unquote separating, right? But the way it works is you separate, it's good, it's taking good with it also. So that's why there's no problem. Now, let's say the fruit gets dirty, fruit falls on the floor, it gets all dirty, and now you want to wash it and put it away. Could you wash it and put it away? So if there's no actual dirt on it, we wash the fruit, put it back to the refrigerator, whatever. If there's actually dirt stuck, there's pieces stuck to it, it's dirty, and you want to wash it, then that's separating. Separating, definition of separating is when 2 different items mix together, but that's not necessarily mixed. If it's stuck together, it's also called a mixture. So you have dirt stuck to the fruit and you're separating it, that's separating. So you can never put it into water. That's prohibited. No, forget about these conditions. You cannot separate inside a utensil. So you can't take fruit that is pieces stuck and now you want to put it inside a can of water to let it soak until, forget about it. Could you rinse it off? You need this condition. Some close to the time of eating. You're going to eat it now? No, I want to get all dirt. I just want to rinse it off and put it back in the fridge. And you can't rinse it off because he's separating and it's not close to the time of eating. Clear? Garlic, peeling garlic. What's garlic different than peeling an orange? It is different. I think we mentioned it in another class. There is an opinion that says that the outer layer of the garlic goes into a different category of dush, of threshing, of methodic, of extracting. There are opinions like that. So the cloves of garlic to peel is like peeling orange, whatever we discussed. But if you have a new garlic, according to many opinions, you should refrain from opening it up at all on Shabbos. So if you have a new garlic, open it before Shabbos.
Like the very outer.
Talking about the very outer garlic, not the cloves. The very outer. It's not clearly prohibited, but there are opinions that say you should be careful because it can go into the category of methodic extracting. Cracking nuts. Are you allowed to crack nuts? Well, what is it different than peeling an orange? Essentially, it's not. So we should keep the same rules, but the Alter Rebbe is strict about it. Alter Rebbe says that we should refrain from cracking nuts on Shabbos because of a concern that you might come to separate. You might come to separate. What do you might come to separate? You're cracking nuts. You keep the rules close to the time of eating. How do people crack nuts? How? When people crack nuts, the way it works is you don't just crack a nut, open it up, they're gonna eat it, and they crack. They're like, they're cracking and cracking. There's a whole system going on. They're cracking, and the table is full of nuts and shells all mixed together. Now, what can happen? There's a concern that if you have a bunch of cracked nuts and shells all mixed together on the table, what can happen by mistake? You'll stop pushing away the shells from the nuts. Now you're separating the bad from the good. So as Alter Rebbe says, there's a concern you might come to separate. So the Alter Rebbe says one should be strict not to eat nuts on Shabbos.
Not to eat nuts?
Oh, so now the Alter Rebbe said that's saying the language of the Alter Rebbe. You should be careful not to eat nuts on Shabbos. Now the Alter Rebbe is referring to peeling, cracking. Some people are under the impression you don't eat nuts on Shabbos. If the nuts are peeled, there's no problem. To crack nuts on Shabbos, the Alter Rebbe says we should be strict. There's also another concern, which is part of the same. It's really the same concern. There's another issue also, and there it is. If you have a bunch of nuts cracked on the table with the shells all mixed together, and you separate the nuts from the shell, the shells from the nuts, besides separating, you're also transgressing on what else are you transgressing on if you take the shells away from the nuts, when it's all broken apart and separated? When you take away the shells and the nuts, you're doing, muktzah. Muktzah. The shells are muktzah. When it's part of it, it's part of it. It's not muktzah because it's part of it. Once it separates, it becomes muktzah. So there's another concern. Okay. Now, eating a bowl of soup. Now, this is not going to sound very pleasant, but I have to teach halacha. You're eating soup and something falls into the soup. I'm not going to say what, because I'm trying to eliminate the discomfort of this conversation. Something falls into the soup, which you don't want. Okay? And you want to get it out, right? So what do? You take it out, right? Is that separating? You can't take it out, right? It's separating. You can't take out that, from the soup, yeah? So what do? What?
It wasn't there originally. Not part of the soup.
But it fell in. It fell in.
That makes it not part of the soup, therefore you can't eat.
Now it's mixed together. It wasn't originally part of the soup, but because it's now in the soup, we're not talking about a large item. We spoke about a matzah bowl in the soup. It's not called a mixture, but a tiny little item, right? It falls into the soup is considered a mixture. It's called mixed together, or it's definitely very questionable. So if you take out that piece of dirt that fell into the soup, you are separating. So you can't just pull it out because it has to be the good from the bad. The liens of taking bad from the good is when there's no other way, when that's the derech, that's the orange, that's how you eat an orange, you peel it. It's different, but when something falls into the soup, there's many other ways how to separate it. So therefore, there's no way in the world you could just go and pull out that piece of dirt from the soup. Yes.
It happens a lot on Shabbos where not for it to be gross, but a lot of times a hair will fall into soup or something like that. Are you supposed to just
you can't, so you can't take it out.
Wow.
One second, we have ways. We're not done. We're gonna give you ways how to deal with it. How do you deal with it? So we're gonna discuss it. Yeah.
You need to take some of the soup out with the thing.
Oh,
with
okay.
the spoon, you need to take.
So in Shulchan Aruch it discusses that the way you do it is you take a spoon and you take soup together with the hair or whatever. So like this, you're taking good from good. But the story doesn't end here. Because the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur, even though the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch wrote this also, but later on in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe changed many halachas. Later on in his life, he went over many halachas in more depth, and he changed certain halachas. He was stricter. And in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe is very strict. The Alter Rebbe says, no, don't do it with a spoon. And the reason why the Alter Rebbe is strict is because what are you doing with the spoon? You're taking out a little soup with the hair, and then what are you doing with it? is going to the garbage, right? So it's all becoming garbage. That's why the Alter Rebbe is strict. The Rebbe says, no, you can't do that.
So you just.
So what do? No, you don't throw out the soup. So Alter Rebbe says like this. You pour. You just pour out until the piece of dirt comes out. You may end up with no soup left in your bowl, but no. So the Alter Rebbe says what you could do is like this. You could blow it until it gets close to the edge of the bowl of soup. So you don't have to lose so much soup. That's not separating. Don't blow it over the edge, because then you're separating. So you could blow it carefully until it gets to the edge of the bowl of soup, and then you pour it out. Why is that okay? I'm separating the bad from the good. Why is that okay? Why is that any better? Anyone? What makes this better? I'm not doing it with my hand. I'm saucing my hand, going like this, and I'm pouring out the piece of dirt. Why is that okay? Anyone? What the Rebbe says like this. When I'm going like this, I'm not taking the bad from the good. I'm taking the good from the bad. Why? Why? What's in my hand? What am I holding in my hand? I'm holding the good. Pouring out the bad, I'm taking the good from the bad. Alter Rebbe says whatever's in your hand, that's what you're taking. Even though technically I'm pouring out the bad. The Alter Rebbe says we look at what's left in your hand. You're holding on to the good. You're pouring out the bad and you're left with the good. So you're actually taking the good from the bad. But, yeah, get it? Now, you have to have this condition. Somech Achila, close to the time of eating. If you're not going to drink the soup now, then you can't. You're still separating. You're separating good from bad. It has to be close to the time of eating. Follow this? Now, for those who may be thinking, what about us to be by hand? Now, it's not called separating with a keli. You're holding on to the keli. Separating the keli means you're using the keli to help you separate. It's not what you're doing, right? So this condition is not an issue. So you can do it, but it has to be close to the time eating because you drink your soup now. But if, let's say, you just want a pitcher of a drink and you want to put it away into the refrigerator, there's a fly in there. You're done with the pitcher, done with the drinks. You want to put it back in the refrigerator. So you want to pour it out and then put it back in the refrigerator. Then could you do it? No, because it's not close to the time of eating. So you're still separating. You're pouring out the bad and left with the good. You're still separating the good from the bad. So you want to pour out the drink. You want to pour it out and just put it back into the refrigerator. You can't, because it's not close to the time of eating. Got it? Cutlery. Now you want to set the table before you go to shul. So when you come back from shul, you don't have so much work. You come back, it's over. Want to set the table right before you go to shul. Set the table, put the cutlery, open up the, take out all the forks and the knives. No problem. Why can't you set the table? But there could be a problem. Because if you have all the forks and the knives and the spoons all mixed together on the drain board from last night, and they're all mixed together, because you washed them last night and they're all sitting mixed together, now you're taking it and you're going to set the table. So you're separating the forks and the knives and the spoon. Now you're separating. You going to eat now? No, I'm going to shul now. You can't set the table. So what could you do? One thing you could do is that when you wash the dishes, I'm not saying you have to wash it. Whoever washes the dishes. I wash the dishes sometimes. So when you wash the dishes Friday night, you're washing a fork, put it wherever you want. In other words, in the sink, there's forks and spoons and knives all mixed together, right? Now, when you're washing it, even though technically you pick up a fork, you separate it, you're not really separating. You don't care what you're grabbing. when you're washing dishes, you know what I'm saying? It's all mixed together. Now you pull out a fork to wash. Is that called separating? Technically, yes, but you don't care what you're taking. Separating means we take out this. Whatever comes to your hand, you're taking. Now, once it's in your hand, the fork, and you wash it, you can put it wherever you want. You're not separating now. So it's by the end of the washing dishes, you can have the forks here, the spoons here, the knives here. Technically, it's called I separated it. Halachically, that doesn't mean you separated it, because once it's in your hand, you can do whatever you want. So you're washing, you randomly pick up a fork to wash. Okay, you finish washing it. And you randomly pick up whatever comes to the end. The spoons go here. So even though you actually separated, but you didn't do the malach of separating, because when it's in your hand, you can do whatever you want with it. Now you have everything separated. And now you can set the table in the morning. That's one thing you can do. Is that clear? This is something else you can do also.
Isn't that an issue of preparing though? Like if you,
Preparing what?
like if you set the table before shul, I feel like I remember learning, but like it's not close to the time of ending, so you can't prepare it that far in advance, something like that.
That's exactly what I said before.
Ah.
That if the cutlery is mixed together,
Oh no, I'm saying like even if it's
not
not mixed.
preparing, it's not about preparing, it's about separating. You cannot, you may be thinking about, I don't know, but just guess, you're saying preparing, maybe you're talking about if you're setting the table on the first day of Yom Tov or the second day of Yom Tov, you can't prepare from one day to the next. I don't know if that's what you discussed, but the issue is if it's mixed together. If it's not mixed, there's no issue. There's something else you can do, and that is from the Igris, yeah.
If you have all the cutlery together and then first you only take the knives and take it out, that's separating. Like if you only take one type of thing at a time, you take all the knives.
Why you take the knives? Why? Because you
So
want,
I'm gonna put them-
right? So that's separating. Yeah. You get it?
Mhm.
Something else you can do. Now, Moshe Feinstein says something very interesting. He says like this. His understanding of separating is, I mean, I don't think, I'm not saying just exclusively his, I'm saying it's based on that understanding. That separating is when you have a bunch of stuff mixed together and you're taking out something from there. What about if I'm holding everything together? I'm holding all of them together. See, I'm holding this, okay? So, obviously, it's not Shabbos, it's muktzah, it's not practical, but let's say it's not muktzah, right? We have a bunch of stuff together over here, right? So if I'm taking out, it's separating. If I'm holding everything together, so far, so good, right? But it's holding it together. Now he says, now don't get scared. Now, if I take everything and I throw it, right? So when I throw it, it's going to separate. So he says you could take all the cutlery and you could throw it on the table. Obviously, if you have a practical way to do it, it has to work, okay? And now you separate it all, but it says it's not called separating. And the way I understand the logic is because separating is when you are taking one out of the bowl. They take one thing out, but I'm holding everything together. And now I throw everything together. I'm throwing everything. I'm not taking this from that. Everything's in my hand, and I throw it. Right? So in that process, everything separates. She says, if you have a way how to do that, yeah, the table is big enough. Obviously, doesn't mean throw it like like you're playing baseball. We mean, you know what I mean? You throw it away where it lands, where it separates. He says you could do that. Now, I'm not saying this is necessarily practical, but it could work in certain situations. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be Zora, middle? If you're not allowed to spit into the wind because it might separate, wouldn't that be exactly the same?
Same as when you're using wind. There's no wind over here.
You're using the wind of your hand. You know what I'm saying? They all
No,
separate in
it's
the wind.
wind. It's not called
It's essentially
wind.
the same thing minus cold air.
No. There's no wind in your. What do you wind in your hand? Wind is wind.
wind is.
Okay, wind doesn't
necessarily.
necessarily mean the wind from Hashem. Wind could also mean there's certain tubes, certain types of spray bottles, certain ones that could be an issue. Most of them are not, because there's a pressurized wind. There's no wind. It's just my hand. Where's the wind? There's no wind over there.
So wind in itself is the quick or movement of air, which can carry things. These things that your hand, when blowing the pens, the cutlery, whatever it is essentially creating its own wind by using the power of your hand to use air to move something. It's exactly the same
It's
as
not
the wind when I'm
cold.
done with this there.
Not really cold. So that's not really called wind. Besides, you're not throwing it overhead. Throwing it, usually it's underhand. If you're gonna do this properly, you're not taking it and throwing it like like playing a game. It means like you throw in the air like this in a light way that it lands, it separates.
So if I
That's what it
sit
means.
downwards, okay?
So I'm saying, besides what I'm saying, when you're throwing like this, that's not called wind, that's called the pressure of your hand. I hear what you're saying, but that's not,
Which is the pressure of the air.
it's not called wind. Nah. I have more words how to put it, it doesn't, think how to explain it, but that's not called wind. It's called pressure of the hand. Okay, so the halachas of separating is not just by food, as we just saw with cutlery, and it's applied to clothing also. So let's say you want to prepare clothing the night before, you open up your drawer and you're choosing different garments that you want. If it's all mixed together, different colors, whatever, and you're choosing a certain color, that's also called separating. Because the definition of separating is when you have two different items that are mixed together or stuck together or close to each other. So even though, let's say it's the same type of garment, it's different color is also considered different. So the night before, you want to prepare clothing for the next morning. So let's say you open up the drawer or whatever, or the wardrobe. It's all bunched together, hanging, all the stuff that are hanging are very close together. That's also called a mixture. If you're choosing one from the other, choosing this dress and that dress, and it's all clumped together, you have to like push, the hangers, you're separating. You're doing it the night before, you can't do that. Huh?
Isn't that really hard to find?
Isn't that?
Good out of bad and for the purpose of.
That's good out of bad, right? And in order to separate, we always go back to the three conditions. Good out of bad, meaning where you desire from your desire. Second condition is close to the time of eating, which translates to close to the time of getting dressed. It's night, it's for the morning. So it's not close to the time where you're going to be using that item.
Oh, but so in the morning, I can totally take the dress out.
But yeah, you want to get dressed in the morning, yes. Yes. But the night before, it's you prepare, it's for the next day. You're not getting dressed now. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
So, going back to the cutlery, so.
What again?
If you have the
Cutlery.
you have all your cutlery, you wash them at night, and then in the morning you want to set the table, but it's like 3 hours before eating, so it's not.
And it's all mixed together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what can we do? How can we still put them and? That's the thing.
So the only thing you can do is either you set the table when you come back from shul. If you want to set it earlier, the only way is what we said is to throw it, to separate it. If you have a big table, they could take it and throw it, and it separates on the table.
You can't randomly make them. Let's say like you do.
Okay, I hear the question. The question is being asked, you want to set the table in the morning, it's all mixed together, so you're going to randomly pick. I think it doesn't help randomly because your intention is to actually separate it. It's not really randomly. You are You sound like when you wash the dishes, when you pick up, it's also randomly. It's different. There's something different about it. When you're setting the table, your intention is to separate it all. You don't care what you separate first, but you want to separate it. When you're washing dishes, you're not trying to, you're taking a fork to wash it. There's something different about it. You're not trying to take the cutlery and separate it. That's not what you want. For me, you have a bunch of cutlery, I don't want to separate it. When you're washing dishes, your intention is not to separate it. The intention is I want to wash the cutlery. I can wash it's too hard to wash all of it together, so I'm taking one at a time. It's not like you're interested in washing it, in separating it. That's the difference. Okay? Any questions? Yeah.
I wanted to ask about mixtures, because you mentioned that earlier, that a mixture is, for example, apples and oranges, right? So if it's like a really small fruit, like, I don't know, blueberries and apples, then that.
Right, so some blueberries and apples is Al Rebbe says there's a doubt. It's not, Al Rebbe himself says, we're not sure, because how is it perceived? So you have to be careful. Okay? Okay, we'll continue with Hashem tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
What do you do?
Thank you.
Oh, how do you get to the
I just tapped here and like it.
tap the top first?
No, just anywhere.